So welcome also from my side. The topic of my keynote today is, as Annie already said, CIAM and the KuppingerCole Identity Fabric, which is the concept that which we use in research and in advisory for describing, for assessing, for developing identity and access management architectures and processes. And let's have a look whether this all fits nicely together. The subtitle is Meeting the Accelerating Demands of a Digital Enterprise, and I hope I can convince you that the identity fabric as we promote it at KuppingerCole is really something that you might want to look at because it's a published concept, so you can just use it. First of all, to start with, and maybe also as a recap, when we look at what we heard yesterday and what we will hear later on, we need to mention the D word, the digital transformation, and we need to understand that these identities that we are dealing with for this event and with a CIAM is really the key for the digital transformation. So we need to make sure that we understand that customer identities are at the heart of marketing, advertising, and sales strategies. And if we mention marketing, advertising, and sales, we see that these are different people than they are usually in touch with IAM systems, which is usually the IT guys. So this is really something that has changed here. So we need to understand that this is really of importance, and we have other stakeholders. This affects all industries and regions. So it's not just the individual customer-facing industries. It's basically all, because we are all now dealing with end-user customers, with B2B2C customers, etc. And our consumers, our customers, they are actually, they're spoiled. They are used to a very good user experience, and they will demand the same from us when we provide these services. So a seamless, consistent, and relevant experience, for example, for the process from registration to authentication to authorization, because they are used to Netflix, to Amazon. So they want to have something as comparable. CIAM, to recap that as well, is far more than just a security domain. Of course, we need to make sure that everyone has access to what they need to have access to, no matter whether they are an employee or a consumer. But it's much more. It's user experience. And it is an access enabler for customers and consumers. So we need to make sure that, as I said, all identities, especially consumers/customers, have to have access to the resources. And we are living in a hybrid world, so we need to make sure that they gain access to every system, no matter where this is actually deployed and where it is running. So it might be on-prem, it might be in the cloud, it might be a hybrid, it might be software as a service. And in the end, we have talked about marketing, advertising, and sales strategies. We need to make sure that we understand and monitor the user behavior as a basis for security on the one hand, and, for example, for marketing automation alike. So it's the business side, it's the security side, and of course, to understand and monitor that, we need to make sure that we have proper consent available. If we look, and I'm as an advisor, and Annie mentioned that, lead advisor, I'm dealing with lots of our end user customers. Sometimes it's not that rare we see silos in place. So having different systems in place for different types of identities, which is really something that we do not endorse and that we really criticize. But this is also due to history. And it's funny enough that those organizations who understood IAM as a key mechanism for security, for efficiency, are often now organized in such a silo because they started out with such an employee IAM system, which is typically run on-prem by a dedicated IAM team. So that is the first silo. They deal with employees, maybe with some freelance users, some partners, if they are manually maintained in there. So this is silo one. And we will have much more silos, as you can guess when you look at the slides. So we have mobile device management, which is often run by a cybersecurity team. All these terms here are just examples and just experiences from some organizations. So you have the IAM team, you have a cybersecurity team, which is not the same team, which might be related, which might be not. So we have the devices that are associated to a person, be it an employee, be it a consumer. We have, of course, in many organizations, as they are typically Windows shops, we have an Active Directory, which is a system which, in the worst case, is maintained separately. In one of the best cases, it's a provision system out of the employee IAM and other systems. So this is something that provides authentication, authorization to everything Windows. But there is more right now. So we need to look at much more silos. I've mentioned the hybrid world. So there is, of course, usually a cloud directory where you have the identities maintained for end users, for customers, for employees, for partners within this system. And who is responsible for that? Yeah, it depends. It depends on who actually purchased or subscribed to this platform and how mature the cloud strategy for such an organization is. And speaking of cloud strategies, many organizations have a multi-cloud strategy, so they will end up with more than one cloud directory. And it depends on who actually uses it and how mature, again, this strategy is, then this is aligned or not aligned. So we end up with lots of silos. And when we talk about CIAM today, we have to have a look at where we put CIAM there as well. So I have left some more room for one more silo. And if you think of your own organization, maybe you have some more. There is the CIAM system. And who owns it? It depends. Who actually is the driver behind that and how mature the CIAM strategy is. It might be marketing. It might be the team that also runs the CRM system. It might be a DevOps-driven development team that has to provide that shiny new app for your customers. And you understand that this is different when it comes to maturity and for the efficiency of having such a CIAM deployed in that way. So I've mentioned many silos, and you see all the issues that go with that. So if we look at the issues of yet another silo for CIAM, I just want to make sure that we all understand that this needs to be prevented. So first of all, if you run a CIAM in that manner, it's just limited benefit. There is no full return on investment. This is really not where you want to go to, because it will not end up with all the efficiency and effectiveness that you wanted to achieve by introducing such a system to take care of your consumers/customers. There might be some potential compliance issues because there's one more system processing PII. Do you know when this has been purchased by the marketing department or subscribed to, where this solution that is actually in place stores its data and whether that is compliant to, for example, GDPR, to CCPA? That might be an issue. You might have potential governance issues because you do not understand the full picture of your identities. Is this customer also an employee? Different silos, employee IAM, CIAM, but there might be an SOD, a segregation of duties violation there as well. So this is really something where you have to have a look at. And finally, we might even end up with more than one CIAM, which is really the worst case then. You might end up with user experience issues when we talk about more than one account for customers in different CIAM or customer-facing application solutions. So this is really something where we do not want to go to, and that is where we use this identity fabric for, to improve that scenario, to get to a better solution. Just one more aspect to look at. We are in a changing environment in an IAM world. We are in a changing environment for a CIAM world. So we are really looking at hybrid architectures. And we are looking at a platform world where the platforms, where the individual services in this platform world provide infrastructure as a service, or in general services to many applications, infrastructures. And we have, of course, more and different identities. And these are also consumer-related or customer-related. I've mentioned mobile device management. Of course, my iPhone is an authenticator when it comes to providing a second factor for identifying me towards any platform, for example, towards a consumer platform on the internet. But we have more. We have partners, we have devices, we have contractors, we have software. and services which might have identities and provide identities. So we need to have a look at that, and a very close look at that. And finally, this modern architecture and deployment scenarios, they provide everything as a service. So we can consume identity and access management and consumer identity and access management from the cloud, and we provide services with our CIAM and with our IAM to the cloud, to any application. So how can we do things better? CIAM and the identity fabric. We think IAM as a service platform, no matter whether there is a CIAM or an IAM. This is a service platform, and the service platform is not a product. We have great CIAM products around. We have great IAM products around. They need to be understood as building blocks within a service platform. So services in a holistic identity paradigm. Sounds great, sounds like analyst speak, but it's true. This is something where we want to aim at. We want to provide all required capabilities to all types of IAM, including CIAM. And there will be specific functionalities provided by a CIAM solution, a CIAM building block here. This approach aims at separating architecture from technology, which makes sure that we have a transparent and a stable architecture, while technologies and products might change over time, but the overall service is provided in an adequate manner. And that means that such a system is hybrid and interconnected by design. So this is really the approach that we want to go forward with. And if we have a quick look at this picture, we used this earlier before in other KuppingerCole live events, but we think it really applies here as well, because it is really a global holistic approach. So we look at the identity fabric, we look at an identity API layer providing all the services that we need for all types of identities, including customers and consumers. So if we look at the identities to the left, we have the consumer, the customer on the top, and I've circled it with a pink frame just to make sure that we see where this all comes into play. So there will be a consumer IAM providing these identities. There might be something provided through other channels. Consumers come in with their own device, they come with their own external identity, and that needs to be handled adequately. And they want access to our systems. And we want to use this information for our purposes. So we need to make sure that all the identities to the left gain access to all the services that they should have access to the right. And that means we need a platform in the middle which provides the capabilities and the services on a technical architecture that makes sure that all this takes place in a uniform manner. So we don't want to necessarily build everything for every type of identity again and again, but we aim at a platform approach, at a building block approach, at reuse. And as you can see, the registration and verification and the concept management again is circled in pink, because this is something that is typically something that we expect from a CIAM solution. So the CIAM solution is something that provides capabilities in such an identity fabric to the identity fabric. And the glue in between is the identity API layer. And if we take these services for these consumers and bundle them together, we might end up with a service, still an abstract service that needs to be then mapped to a product, to an actual, to a piece of software, that we have something like a consumer onboarding service. And reuse is good at that point, because we need to make sure that we understand that such a registration and verification is not necessarily only for consumers, but we might want to use that also, for example, for a partner onboarding process as well. So we need registration, verification, and concept management there as well. And we deploy this all in a technical architecture as modern as possible between a local data center and the cloud, all within microservices, all encapsulated and then exposed through APIs. So this is the ideal world that we are looking at. And what do we want to achieve with that? We want to use that for integrating into our existing platform. And that might even include a legacy IAM, legacy applications, even applications that consumers should have access to. think of an insurance providing services in highly critical systems to end users via an app. That might be something. We want to integrate that through standards and custom integration, if necessary, to existing digital services and software as a service. So we provide data to these services, and we need to make sure that we provide the information that is required by digital services from the outside through our identity API layer, and we need to make sure that this is well done here as well. Like you see, there's one thing missing, and that is actually one of the examples that I've mentioned before. If we think of marketing automation, which is closely related, again, a pink frame around that, if we want to think of marketing automation being provided, for example, from the cloud, this identity API layer will provide information to the marketing automation, and we need to make sure that we can, for example, authenticate via our identity fabric here. So we make sure that we have the agility that we need to have to provide efficiently the digital services as required, as it said in my subtitle for this keynote, and we need to make sure that we are well integrated within our own infrastructure and have the hybrid support. And this completes our identity fabric that we think is also perfectly suitable for creating an overall IAM platform with the specifics provided by a CIAM solution and providing services across the complete organization for all types of identities. To summarize that, my summary and my takeaways for today, first of all, we really think it makes perfect sense to align CIAM and IAM. So we really need to understand that we have to meet all these requirements, which might be the same and which might be different. What we don't want to have is a single infrastructure. This is not what we are talking about. We are talking about well-aligned services that are provided and orchestrated and governed within an overall IAM architecture, a model to think of. It's not one system, so really the specifics of a CIAM system can really demonstrate its strengths within such a platform. But we want to provide services for all types of identities, as I mentioned, and to understand them across all systems that we are working with. If we think of the identity fabric as I've presented it just in the slide before, I think that makes perfect sense for evolving your identity and access management with CIAM being a part of that, and think of your IAM service as a portfolio of well-defined and segregated services. I've mentioned the APIs as the glue between all these services that we provide, so we have a secure, a standardized, and a scalable interface for providing and consuming IAM functionality. That is really of importance because that also is an enabler for the next takeaway. We have changing deployment and operating models, so we need to make sure that we use these APIs, that we use standard protocols for evolving over time, for maybe moving one service from on-premises into the cloud without losing functionality while being compliant to all the requirements that we have and while exchanging data via standardized protocols, even in various systems. And maybe we can also think of providing the same type of service, the same building block from the identity fabric within different incarnations for different types of identities. So access management might be something different for internal users, employees, and for external users, for example, consumers and customers. So to sum it up, CIAM and the identity fabric is really something that we would like to recommend thinking of the identity fabric concept and thinking of CIAM being a part of that, so we can support the distinctive features for CIAM wherever required, and we can ensure efficiency and reuse wherever possible. And that's it for my presentation, and I'm happy to take your questions.